Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasani Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna. Okay. Is it too loud? Yeah, okay. How's this? Is this okay? This level? Still too high? Got to be lower. All right, let's have a look. Is this all right? A little bit too high. Little bit too high. Should be lower. Dolce beat Mencha. All right. Not quite sure what to do. Well, how about that? Okay. Okay. Now, let us begin again. We'll begin again. First of all, some prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna devotees. Welcome to our Nectar of Instruction session tonight, our third night on verse 6, and we will be finishing verse 6 tonight. I'll read the verse one more time. Drishtai swabhava janatar vapushascha doshayar na prakritatvam iha bhakta janasya pashyet gangam basam nakalu budbudapena pankayar Brahma dravatvam apagachati niradharamai. Being situated in his original Krishna-conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. All right. So, yes, we have covered 6 verses. We've covered 6 verses, 6 paragraphs. And we have 3 more. And they're related to the last 3 we discussed last night. But there's some significant enough difference in that these paragraphs here are not just talking about misconceptions, misunderstandings, like someone has to be born in a certain body, otherwise, they just can never become qualified spiritually. That's more just a misunderstanding. Here now, this is more talking about actual offense. And we touched on it at the end yesterday. But now we're going to focus on the important subject of offenses. So Prabhupada begins purport number 6, paragraph. If we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnav, we should understand that we're committing an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnav. Well, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about a number of offenses of this type. He says, it is an offense to think you understand a Vaishnav just because they've taken a certain birth. He says so that's an offense. So he says that if you judge a Vaishnav in a negative way, because there are some sort of habits left over. I mean, not sinful habits, of course, but just personality quirks even, which are left over from their previous upbringing, material upbringing. Like an example, when Prabhupada first took the Western devotees to India, first of all, some people didn't like them just because they were not Indian, because they were foreigners. But some of them, when there was some interaction occurred, some of them found that some, not all, but some of the, God bless them, American devotees were kind of loud and, sort of very active. And do you know the word boisterous? They were kind of domineering types of people. I mean, the dear old Americans. I have many very good friends who are very saintly Americans, but the Americans have a reputation for being sort of, like that. So the more peaceful, cultured, and be careful to do the right thing and not the wrong thing Hindu people found these Americans were just a bit too much. So but they are devotees. And there are many of them who are real gentlemen and gentle ladies. That's definitely a fact. I know, like I said, I know many of them very well. So to judge in a negative sense a Vaishnav on the basis of some habits or personality traits which are just hung over from the way they were brought up. That's the second one. Then, if a Vaishnav, because of the previous upbringing, actually does something wrong, this is related, we discussed in verse 5, Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 30. Even if a devotee does something abominable, he or she should be considered saintly as long as they're determined basically to continue in Krishna consciousness. So in that sort of situation, if a devotee actually does something quite wrong, but then if you remain attached to that and you're not willing to say, well, the person is saintly and we must treat them in a certain very nice way. If you now become prejudiced against them, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this is another offense in dealings with devotees. And there are others too, but those are just a few. So, of course, this verse is particularly describing Uttama Adhikaris, the most elevated devotees. But also there are elements which are related to any devotee, particularly any sincere devotee. Prabhupada goes on to say, to describe how dangerous it is to offend a Vaishnav. I mean, this is a very well-known example from Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you offend a devotee, particularly an advanced devotee, but any sincere devotee, if you offend them, then it is described as being, it is called the mad elephant offense. Yes. We all know elephants. I mean, at least we know of them, what they're like. They are big, and they're powerful, and they're very heavy. And you just don't get on the wrong side of an elephant, because they'll wipe you out just in seconds. So the idea, which is pointed out, Prabhupada points it out in the purport, and it's actually Lord Chaitanya in Chaitanya Charitamrita talks about it, is that we are trying to develop our bhakti, our Krishna consciousness. And previously, some days ago, we read how that is like having a seed planted in your heart. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai, Bhakti Lata Bij, by the mercy of Krishna and the spiritual master. The seed of bhakti is planted in the devotee's heart. And then if you water the seed, then it sprouts and grows and becomes a creeper, a vine. It doesn't exactly become a tree, it becomes a vine. Anyway, it becomes some sort of plant. So we are trying, according to this example from Lord Chaitanya, we're trying to cultivate, develop our creeper of devotion in the garden of our heart. So we're trying to make a nice garden in the heart so the creeper will grow and develop and become luxuriant and very rich and healthy and nice. But if an elephant enters your garden, then within no time, in no time, your whole garden can be just sort of obliterated. Everything trampled and squashed and just... So this is the point that Prabhupada's making here, and it's one of the points in verse number 6, that if people, and particularly we, commit offenses to other devotees, and the more advanced the devotee that you offend, the more serious it becomes. But even with a neophyte, it's not a joke, it's serious. So anyway, if you do like that, then that offense is like a mad elephant. And that offense enters your heart. That elephant enters the garden of your heart, and then before you know, you're in bad shape spiritually. You lose your taste. You lose your enthusiasm. So many ideas for enjoying material life come up. This is the result. Yeah. So, let me just tell you one little story. Many of you would have heard it before, but it's extremely relevant. Is that our Padayatra in India many years ago, like it was 85 or something like that, really some time ago, they were walking around India, quite a large group, I don't know, maybe 100 or something devotees, and they had an elephant with them. And this elephant would walk. They were all walking, and the elephant would walk in front. And the elephant liked to be in the front. In fact, the elephant had to be in the front. Otherwise, the elephant became disturbed and would express her disturbance by hitting people with her trunk. So the devotees stayed overnight in one village in South India, where there are many devotees living. And they had a program, and the local devotees were just so happy. Next morning, the Padayatra moved on to the next destination, and quite a few devotees from the village followed with them for some time, and then, after a while they turned back and went back home. So they're following along with us, and kirtan's going on. It's very nice, very blissful. And one elderly devotee somehow got the inspiration to try and go in the front. Whenever we have a program like a parikrama, different parikramas, there have to be one or two or a few devotees who feel they have to go into the front. And you may tell them, please come back, and they come back, but then they go to the front again. So anyway, this elderly devotee felt he had to go to the front. And he went to the front, just right in front of the elephant. And the elephant, as usual, flicked him with her trunk and almost knocked him over. And he went back. He somehow got the idea, he went back. But then some minutes later, he came into the front again, dancing in the kirtan, Haribol. And she hit him with her trunk again. And again he went back. And then a third time he came to the front, dancing and chanting. And this time the elephant, don't mind me telling you this, it really is pretty dramatic. The elephant picked him up with her trunk and threw him, lifted him and threw him on the ground and trod on him. And as we say, Goloka Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. The devotee left his body. Yeah. Watch out for mad elephants. Watch out for any elephant, because elephants are very sensitive creatures. They don't like being treated in certain ways, and they'll remember for many years. But what to speak of a mad one? All right, anyway. So the thing is that Prabhupada's making the point in the same paragraph that particularly between junior and senior, of course in one sense it applies with everyone, but particularly from junior to senior, the neophyte should never consider a pure devotee. And again, Prabhupada's talking about the very high level. From a material point of view, if the devotee, well, we read the verse a few times now, if they have some physical disability or whatever it may be, some unusual bodily, or even as we mentioned yesterday, maybe sort of psychological type of condition in Krishna consciousness. Don't underestimate senior devotees. I mean, and specifically those who are very serious about practicing Krishna consciousness. So one should be careful to do like that. And one should respect the devotees. And if you respect all the devotees, but particularly the senior devotees, if you really respect them and serve them, and when appropriate, inquire from them, then you will get mercy. They may just bless you themselves, and whether they will, actually. Plus, if Krishna sees that you are treating his dear devotees, the senior ones who are closer to him, that you're treating them very respectfully, Krishna appreciates. Krishna takes things very personally. Yeah. So we'll get mercy. Whereas on the other hand, of course, we'll get serious trouble. I want to tell you one incident. It's from Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Leela, chapter 3, the pastimes of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was invited to do a Krishna Katha, a Krishna conscious program at the place of some very wealthy devotees. They had a hall, quite a big setup. So, and many people came, and all sorts of different people came, many devotees, but others who were just, not really devotees, but they were just a little interested. And Haridas Thakur came, and he spoke the verse, one of the verses that we read earlier. Let me just read it again in English. Our translator will translate. As the rising sun immediately dissipates all the world's darkness, which is deep like an ocean. So, the holy name of the Lord, if chanted once without offenses, dissipates all the reactions of a living being's sinful life. All glories to that holy name of the Lord, which is auspicious for the entire world. So Haridas Thakur at that gathering recited that verse. And the devotees, the people there, someone there said, Can you explain it? Well, no, actually, there were some Vaishnav scholars there. Haridas asked them to explain it. They said, better if you explain it. So Haridas Thakur began explaining it. And he explained that just as the sun is rising, as the verse says, as the sun rises, all the darkness goes gradually. It's not like turning on a light, but step by step the darkness goes. So similarly, when one chants the holy names, the darkness in the heart gradually goes. And he said, even at the first glimpse of sunlight, you see, oh, the sun, yeah, just on the horizon there's some light, just on the horizon. Then thieves, ghosts, demons, tikalosh, if you're South African, these nasty beings, and crooks also. As soon as the sun just begins, it's nowhere near like fully risen. Just when it first begins to rise, then the darkness in the heart starts becoming removed. And he said, even that the chanting is so wonderful, even a dim reflection, just a little bit of potency from the holy name, with not chanted even purely in namabhas, that is enough to give liberation. So there was one Brahmin, sort of scholarly type fellow there. His name was Gopal Chakravarti, and he was very proud of his learning and of everything. He was also proud of his nose and fingers. They were very delicate, and we'll come to them in a couple of minutes. But he was proud of his knowledge, so he protested that, listen to this sentimental devotee. In order to get liberation, you have to practice steadfastly for many lifetimes, and then you get this perfection, liberation. And Haridas Thakur said, well, chanting of Hare Krishna is so powerful that just in the beginning stage, or at least the clearing stage, the namabhas stage, just like in the example of the sun, just like when the light of the sun is just beginning to come over the horizon, then at that stage of chanting, liberation is there. So, it's a bit of a long story, but basically, Gopal Chakravarti, he became sort of enraged. And he said, listen, if it is not true that with just a little advancement coming to namabhas, in chanting the holy names, that you achieve liberation. If it's not true what you have said, I will cut off your nose. And Haridas Thakur said, if what I've said is not true, I will cut off my own nose. And then the meeting sort of broke up because people were offended by this Gopal Chakravarti, and the meeting just broke up in a whole, in English we would say a whole kerfuffle, like just a whole big disturbance. So anyway, let's say, I think it's 3 days later. 3 days later, Gopal Chakravarti got leprosy, and his nose melted and fell off. And his delicate fingers, mine are not so delicate, but what can you do? They're the only ones I've got. His delicate fingers also melted and just fell off. So, the Brahmin's toes and fingers were beautiful, like golden-colored champak buds, but because of leprosy, they all withered and gradually melted away. And seeing this happen, becoming aware that this had happened, all the people were amazed. What is the position of this Haridas Thakur? Yeah. Someone offends him, and their life becomes a disaster. So, actually, Haridas Thakur, he didn't worry about about the offense. He just forgot about it. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami concludes the pastime by saying, a characteristic of a pure devotee is that he excuses any offense by an ignorant rascal, an offense to himself. A characteristic of Krishna, however, is that he cannot tolerate blasphemy of his devotees. Hare Krishna. Watch out for mad elephants. So let's see now. We could have a whole seminar on this subject actually, but we've got to move on. So let me just read one other verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's important. At least the basic idea, I'll tell you, is that when you chant the holy names, if tears do not come from your eyes, and your body does not shiver in ecstasy, and a few other things like that, then you should understand your heart is steel framed. That's Srimad Bhagavatam. It is 2:3:24. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes what does it mean steel framed, and he says it means offences, and he says that this is in Madhurya Kadambini actually. He says that you may say, I am not committing offences. But if when you chant, tears are not coming from your eyes and so on, then you must understand that you are. You may be just in ignorance to the point that you're not aware. As they say, where ignorance is bliss, it is folly, it is foolishness to be wise, which is not true, of course. Okay, so we go on to the next paragraph. Let's see now. Well, there's a need to fasten the seatbelts a little here. The next paragraph, it's the second to last paragraph in the purport. Prabhupada talks about the way he was treated by many of his godbrothers. Not all, but many. There was a small number who were appreciative. You remember we mentioned the other day Krishnadas Babaji jumping onto Prabhupada's bed. So he was very appreciative, and there were a few others, but there were a greater number, who didn't take Prabhupada seriously. Yeah. They really objected to him allowing himself to be addressed with that term, Prabhupada. They felt it should only be for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So anyway, Prabhupada starts talking about them, that there's a certain group of devotees who are prone to see the external features, not see the hearts of devotees, to see external features. Like, for example, if they're a bit loud, that's very external. So they see that, and they become prejudiced, become very judgmental. And then Prabhupada talks about his relationship with his godbrothers, that such neophytes unable to appreciate the exalted service of the advanced devotee try to bring the Mahabhagavat to their platform. We experience such difficulty in propagating this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And here we go, brace yourselves. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by neophyte godbrothers who do not appreciate the extraordinary activities of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. They simply try to bring us to their platform, and they try to criticize us in every respect. Yeah. We very much regret their naive activities and poor fund of knowledge. An empowered person who is actually engaged in the confidential service of the Lord, Prabhupada is talking about himself, or any other devotee who's doing like that, but most specifically himself, should not be treated as an ordinary human being. For it is stated that unless one is empowered by Krishna, one cannot spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world, as Srila Prabhupada very much did. And as those who, after him, who have been empowered by him and who are faithfully following him, are continuing to do. Yeah, so we go on to the last paragraph, paragraph 9. Anyway, it's the last paragraph. And Prabhupada continues exploring this very important but rather unpleasant subject. So when you criticize particularly a devotee like Prabhupada, but actually any devotee, but particularly someone exalted, superhuman like Srila Prabhupada, if you offend them, that's very obstructive and dangerous. And you will find that difficulties just start appearing in front of you and inside of you also. So, he says, a person cannot derive any spiritual benefit when he offends the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. It's also an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnav an object of disciplinary action. They sort of tried to do that with Prabhupada also, objecting to him being called Prabhupada. And then, Prabhupada sort of changes the perspective a little. Prabhupada says, one can distinguish between a neophyte Vaishnav and an advanced Vaishnav by their activities. An advanced Vaishnav is always situated as the spiritual master, and the neophyte is always considered his disciple. The spiritual master must not be subjected to the advice of a disciple, nor should a spiritual master be obliged to take instructions from those who are not his disciples. It's a special position in life. We could mention one pastime of Prabhupada's. In those first couple of years when Prabhupada was bringing Western disciples to India, they organized for Prabhupada big pandal programs, like a big tent, very big, marquee, very big, which could take 10,000 or even 20,000 people. Huge, but something covering. And there would be kirtan and Prabhupada would speak. So one time, one Westerner climbed onto the onto the stage. He climbed onto the stage. And the devotees on the stage tried to stop him. But Prabhupada said, no, let him. So he sat down. Then at some point, there was a little, some seconds, 10 seconds or something, 15, gap between maybe Prabhupada finishing speaking and whatever was the next thing. And this fellow grabbed a microphone and started asking Prabhupada sort of heavy questions. You say Bhagavad Gita was written 5,000 years ago. I have heard that it was written, 2,000 years ago. What do you say about that? Aggressive. And Prabhupada, first of all, Prabhupada just sort of said, no, it's all right. It's okay. Maybe we could discuss later. But this young man, he was into it. And he asked another kind of heavy and very challenging question. And Prabhupada said that, I will not answer. This is now in front of maybe 10 to 20,000 people. I will not answer. And it's all over the microphones, over the sound system. I will not answer. And the fellow demanded, you must answer. I'm asking you questions. You must answer. And Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada concluded it, Prabhupada said, you are not my disciple. I am not obliged to answer your questions. And he left. Yeah. An interesting incident. And in keeping with what Prabhupada says, at the end of towards the end of the purport there. Yeah. So therefore, that's something to do with offences. And as Prabhupada says, this is the sum and substance of Srila Rupa Goswami's advice in the 6th verse. So I think that's it for this evening. Yeah? Let me read something where Prabhupada addresses this point of people who are envious of him. It's in his concluding notes, right at the end of the 25th chapter of Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it's not just about Prabhupada's godbrothers or any of them. It's just about people who don't appreciate, and they're envious and they criticize. So, well, first of all, there is the verse from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. The Chaitanya Charitamrita pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are a very secret literature. It is the life and soul of all devotees. Those who are not qualified, not fit to relish this literature, who are envious like hogs and pigs, will certainly not adore it. However, this will not harm my attempt. Yes. Lord Chaitanya's pastimes will certainly please the saintly devotees. So that was the last verse in the whole Madhya Lila. And then Prabhupada makes like a concluding note. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita has condemned all his enemies by comparing them to envious hogs and pigs. The Krishna consciousness movement, which is spreading throughout the world, is being appreciated by sincere people. I mean, I'm leaving out a few bits and pieces. Nonetheless, in India, there are some people who say that they are Vaishnavas, but they're actually very envious of the Acharya of ISKCON, of Srila Prabhupada. They have tried to suppress our activities in many ways. But we follow in the footsteps of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and take those people to be envious pigs and hogs. Yeah, and Prabhupada goes on, we're just trying to present the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in an honest and sincere way, and the devotees, sincere devotees, will appreciate, and we are very happy with this. So anyway, devotees, I'm not trying to encourage you to get into the mood of seeing people as envious hogs and pigs, although there are such people here and there. Unfortunately, they do exist. But this is more for ourselves. What I really want you to learn from what we've discussed tonight is, for us, we must not offend. Rather than offend, we must serve and glorify all the devotees, and particularly the most senior devotees. And as Prabhupada says right at the end of the purport, this is the sum and substance of Srila Rupa Goswami's advice in the 6th verse. Hare Krishna. So we will end there. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.